Okay, we'll go ahead and move on then. So first, as the Tower Hill team mentioned, this is completely new this year. We've never seen the engineering portfolio before. So I wanted to start with just a short presentation of the basics that we're all on the same page moving in. So first of all, what is the portfolio? And a lot of this is from Game Manual 1, by the way. That's a great resource. So the portfolio is supposed to be a short, concise summary of the notebook, kind of like a resume or a CV, and it is required for any and all judged awards that you may want to get. And that might leave you wondering about the fate of the engineering notebook. Obviously, this is different, but it is technically optional this year. However, highly recommended according to FIRST. And FIRST calls it a fundamental source of information for your team to use when you're creating your portfolio. And so one quote that stood out to me that I wanted to bring to your attention is that judges may not need to reference your team's engineering notebook. We expect that the higher the quality of your portfolio, the less likely judges will need to reference the notebook. So just keep that in mind as throughout our discussion today. Yeah, so now I'm going to go through some of the very basic rules of the portfolio. First of all, a maximum of 15 pages plus a cover sheet. And we believe that that's one-sided pages, although Lena can confirm for us. And you're going to need the team number on the top of every page. And before a competition, you're either going to want it printed out or in one file. So just general housekeeping things. Now, obviously, this picture on the left is what I call the minimum viable portfolio, MVP. I thought it was kind of clever. So you could technically submit that. However, you're going to want some more things. So things that you might want to include are sketches, discussions, the evolution of your design, goals and obstacles, how team members learn skills, and each team member's thoughts throughout the season. And a second way of looking at this might be in categories. So if this is more helpful to you, sort of the four main categories that Game Manual 1 outlines is engineering content, your general team information, outreach, and a team plan. And of course, I'm going through all of this pretty quickly, but I just want to note that we will send out this presentation to you so you can use this as a resource or as well as the recording. Yeah, speaking of resources that I will not go through now, this is sort of a summary that we made of Game Manual 1 and organized it into the four categories I just mentioned. So these are, as you can see, we have the awards next to each one of these. So I'm obviously not going to read through every bullet point right now, but you can feel free to refer back to this if this is helpful to your team. Yeah, and this brings us to a big question. How do we start? As we've all mentioned, this is completely new for every team, so we're all kind of in the same boat here. And definitely at Mo, it's been a bit of a struggle just getting off the ground. But we wanted to propose a bit of a roadmap for your team and how you're going to actually get started here. So when you're talking to your team, some questions you're going to want to bring up are, do you want it to be online or handwritten? Considering the pandemic, I think the answer might not be that hard to come to. And if you choose electronic, then you're going to have to choose what software as well. And additionally, you're going to want to figure out what team members, resources, or mentors are going to assist you in this process, because I'm sure some people are going to try to make it by themselves, and I would not recommend that. I think that would be not a fun thing to do. And once you move past that, there are a couple more logistics. Obviously, you're limited in how many pages you have, so you might want to choose which things are most important to your team and how many pages do you want to use to show off what's great about your team to the judges. You also need to figure out if you want styles or fonts to be the same, and if you have a team member who's great at graphic design, then that's a great task for them. And finally, one more consideration is feedback. I know here at Mo, we were thinking about looking at or going to companies or engineers we know to see if they would review our portfolio for us and give us some feedback. But we were also thinking if other Delaware teams are interested, we would love to have an exchange of portfolios ahead of Delaware states. So we'll send out more information about that, but definitely if you're interested, we'd love to do that. so everyone can see each other's portfolios ahead of the competition. And yeah, finally, one more resource obviously is Game Manual 1. This has all of the rules that you would ever need to know. And one thing in particular is this chart that I wanted to point out, where you have, it gives you all of the categories for awards, as well as things that you would need in the portfolio for that. So if there's one award that you're going for, that might be a good resource for you. Okay, and that is the end of my quick recap there. Hopefully now we are all on the same page for what the portfolio is and generally what needs to be in it. Great, so I've stopped my screen share, and yeah, now I'd like to pass it off to Lena to fill in those gaps.
Sure, thanks, Claire. First, is there any questions from that we can help answer, or should I just go into it? Anybody, anything really off the bat?
Yeah, I have a question. So it seems that like the amount of content is pretty important. Are we talking about like the regular sized 8.5 by 11 pages, or are they notebook pages?
They are 8.5 by 11 printer paper. I believe the manual specifies A4 for international teams, but for in the US, think of a normal 8.5 by 11 size printer paper. So what I said before was right. It is 15 sides. So if you were to print this out, it would be 8 pages front and back. If that makes sense. So you can have a cover sheet, that's fine, but your actual content is only 15 sides of information.
All right, thanks.
All right, so I kind of wanted to go into it a little bit from the judges' side about what we see, what we use the engineering notebook for, and how that might translate into the portfolio. Because like you guys said, this is new for everyone. This is new for you guys. This is new for us too. This is the first year they've rolled this out. I think it's going to be good. It's just interesting to have this roll out in the year that we're having being remote. The portfolio is here to stay. They are planning on using this for future seasons. So expect this to be existing in future seasons as well. So wanted to give you guys a little insight into how we use the engineering notebook during the judging process, and hopefully that'll help translate into how I foresee us using the portfolio, and how that you guys can take that back and plan. So for the judging interview, you go in, you do your presentation, you get the Q&A session, and then typically you leave your engineering notebook and then you get it back at the end of the day. What we use the engineering notebook for is from the interview, we will go back to the rest of the team, and from our interviews, nominate the teams that we interviewed for the different awards, for Think, for Connect, Motivate, for Innovate, and so on and so forth. Once we have those teams nominated, then we go through the process of re-interviewing the teams to then rank the nominated teams within each award. What we use the notebook for at that point is we look at the engineering process especially for the technical awards, for Innovate, for Design, for Control, and most importantly for Think, is the engineering process. We want the evolution of the robot, your team's thought process of how you got from point A to where you are at that given point in this season. This includes drawings. This can be hand drawings or CAD. We want to see some math that when you went into it, you don't just slap a robot together. You have to calculate gear ratios and other things, how like measurements on your drawings. How do you know everything's going to fit together? You don't just take a saw and just hack at it until it fits. Hopefully, no judgment if you do, but we're hoping a little bit more thought process goes into it. Test results. If you are building a robot, your first iteration is not going to be your final iteration. So if you built an arm, you had to test the arm to make sure it did what you wanted it to do. So where are those results? What did you get from those results? Was your first build perfect? And again, probably not. But so there was progression, there was test results, there was your reflections of what happened and how you had to change it. those are the kinds of insights that we're looking into when we're talking about the engineering process. Regarding outreach and mentors, which is important for your Connect and your Motivate award. Outreach, obviously, it's like how you're reaching out to the community, how you are reaching out to tech companies to give you, like, help you with mentors or learn about how engineering is used in the real world in a lot of different companies. But what I find a lot of teams actually miss in their notebook is listing out their mentors. They'll tell us about their mentors in the interview when they're there with us, but then when we go through the notebook, we can't find any mention of their mentors at all. So, and that's, I think, heavily emphasized in this year's manual is the what you're learning from your mentors, how you're passing on the information, the sustainability, that kind of thing. So I think there's a more emphasis in it this year, but make sure you're including that in your notebook as well. And then also the team summary, and this is also important. This is a requirement for those outreach, the Connect and Motivate awards, is either a business plan or a strategic plan or sustainability and skills development plan. I will say, if you decide to include a business plan, make sure you have financials, because that is a big part of a business plan. Is you can't have a business without knowing where your money came from and where it went and how much you have left. So I will say that's also a component that we end up missing in a business plan. We'll get receipts sometimes, but like that's not an actual financials. It's in, it's out. Think of it like a balance sheet. That's what if you choose to include a business plan, make sure you have that.
Make it a pop-up book.
I apologize for my husband. Get out.
Okay.
Sorry, that was if you guys have been to events in the past, that's Noah Dillard. So
Good advice.
this is being recorded.
Okay, I hope so.
Get out. Sorry about that. How does this translate to the engineering portfolio? It's basically very similar to this, but condensed. If you think about it, have you ever seen art students with an art portfolio? It's usually, it's a thin folder with their best work. This is what they want to show off. This is what you should think of the engineering portfolio about. This is what you want to show off to us as to the judges. Also similarly, like when you've done an engineering notebook in the past, if you do the summary sheet, you know how like you call out this award, go to this page, this award, go to this page, to see our arm, go to there, to see our outreach, go to this page. Think of it like that, but instead of pointing us at the pages, you're pulling those pages and copying them from your notebook and condensing them into just a pamphlet for us to be able to carry off from the interview. So that's kind of how I was envisioning it, is how I think would be the easiest, maybe not the easiest, but like a good way to kind of envision what this portfolio would be, because it's not a lot of pages. You want to be smart with your real estate. You have to stay above 10 point. Like you can't do those like how like when you're writing like cheat sheet cards for a test, and you're like your professor lets you do the 3x5 card and you like write as little as possible. You can't do that here. You have to have a minimum 10 size font. So you have to be smart about what you're putting in, and it's going to be different for each team, what you want to emphasize on. If you want to, put more about your engineering content, put more about your outreach, it really depends on every team's makeup. So I'm not going to sit here and say, do this, do this, do that. So you really have to decide as a team what is best for you and what fits. But just remember that flow is important too. It kind of has to make sense. Like, I don't want, like, if we see engineering outreach, like to me that doesn't really make sense. You kind of want to make sure they're all together, like that kind of thing. Make sure the flow makes sense for anybody looking at it. If you're at all concerned about it, give it to somebody outside of the team. See if you were to hand it to a friend who's not on the team, or your parents who aren't involved or something like that, see if they can make sense of what you put in there. Does it tell a story? Does it tell what you want it to? That kind of thing. So I would say, I know in the manual, and by the way, read the manual. That's what we always say. It will give you all the guidelines for this. Also, I would pay attention to the forum. At first has a forum for game rules, for inspection, for robot build, what's allowed and what isn't allowed. They also have one for judging. So it's always good to check in there every so often, because what is written in the forum technically supersedes what's in the manual if it came out later. So if there's any adjustments to what the manual says, it will be in the forum, and that's what we have to go by. I do recommend, even though it is optional this year, I do recommend still maintaining an engineering notebook. Even if the judges don't ask for it this year, it's still a good habit to develop, because for your overall documentation purposes for the team, because think about it, with the engineering portfolio being here to stay, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we do not have a season like this again and we'll be in person again. It will be much more likely, in my opinion, that the judges will ask to look at the engineering notebook, because you'll have it in your pit. It'll be in person. Like, the online process is going to be a little difficult to actually like ask for a notebook, to be able to upload so much data and be able to look through it for each team. But when we're in person, we'll walk away from the interview with your portfolio, but you'll still have your notebook at your pit. If there's anything we need to look into and want to talk about it some more, then we can just easily go to the pit and find it and find you. So that's why I recommend still having it and still maintaining that discipline of recording and documenting your season. Just remember, if you have any brainstorming things, we want to document that as well, even if it's drawings, doodles, on a whiteboard, that kind of thing, where you guys are all in a group brainstorming. Take a picture of that. Take a picture, scan it in, or just upload it, that kind of thing. And the same thing for drawings in person, because I know sometimes people like to sketch, or you might not have access to CAD. Drawings are perfectly fine if you want to make sure they get in to your notebook and your portfolio by, everyone has smartphones, right? Take a picture, send it, email it to it. You'll figure it out. For any mentors on the line, just so you know, we haven't gone through an official event yet, so I haven't seen this yet, but what I'm hearing from other states and other regions is, once you register for an event where there's going to be judging, the head mentor whatever mentor is listed in the #1 slot, they're going to get an email with a link. I believe it's in the scoring system. First is trying out a couple different information sharing hubs. So most recently they're combining it with the scoring system, but they'll get a link where your team can upload the portfolio, which would be one document, the control award, which does not count towards your 15 pages. So that is a separate sheet. So make that a separate file. And then the judging feedback form, which is new this year, which if your team wants the judging feedback, then there's a top section that has to be filled out before the judges will fill out the form. So all of this is online on First website for resources. I think there's a link in the manual to the judge feedback form. Again, that's new this year, new for the judges as well. So, but everything I've heard back is that it's a good thing. So, it's pretty much what I had. I know I went through a lot of information really quickly. Is there any questions?
Yeah, that was definitely
Yeah.
super
Oh,
useful. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I think that's super useful to hear, especially since, at least in Delaware, like, we're not gonna have competitions other than states. But sorry, whoever was talking, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so you mentioned that there's a minimum 10 size font. Is there a required font type?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. If it does, it's in the manual.
All right, thanks.
I just saw, let's see. It just says fonts used must be a minimum of 10 points. No, I don't see a specific font type specified.
Okay.
Please do not use Comic Sans. I will deduct that from, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Since obviously this is only 15 pages, it doesn't seem like a lot. Would you recommend that teams try to maybe focus towards one award or one strength, or do you think it's still possible to do like an overall summary in this case?
No, I think it's still doable to do an overall summary because, well, it depends, because your engineering content is going to work for all of, like, your innovate, your design, I mean, innovate is what specifies with innovate is, you know, we want to see the engineering content, especially like specifically regarding the innovative aspect. So if you have a really unique drivetrain, if you have a really cool arm, if your intake system is, you know, you haven't seen any other team do it, like we want, like the drawings of that is important for innovate. But overall, if you document your engineering process, that'll cover you for think, innovate, design, already. And then having your outreach and your sustainability or business plan kind of there already covers the the requirements for your connect and motivate. I'd say you'd have to do a little bit of reflection and see which you think your team is more likely to be strong in. Like if you don't feel like you've only done one outreach event, you don't think you're going to do very good in motivate. I mean, yeah, you'd still want it there, but I wouldn't devote like a whole page summary to that one outreach event. You know what I mean? Like you kind of have to weigh which one is going to be more important. I don't think you should focus on any one, but I think you should reflect on your team's strengths and see which ones you want to focus on.
Yeah, I that's definitely a good point. I think because there's a lot of I saw that there was a lot of overlap, but I haven't really been able to dive.
Definitely. I will say for reflections, be a little careful there. We do want to see insight and what your team learned through this process, because you're always going to be learning something new. But keep the daily logs to your notebook. You're not going to have room in your portfolio for that. If there's anything particularly insightful from a team member that you might want to like call out as like a caption or a blurb kind of thing, like saying like, you know, from this process, these came out, I would say that would be useful, but the daily logs and stuff, that's just going to take up too much space. So any other questions?
Yeah, I definitely have more questions, but I just wanted to say if anyone, either you can unmute or post them in the chat, if either is easier. But yeah, I did have another question.
Sure.
As you mentioned, like it's probably going to be less likely that people will look at the notebook this year. Would you recommend that we include page number references to the notebook, or is that just like distracting and not necessary?
I wouldn't say it's distracting. I'd say it wouldn't hurt. I personally wouldn't have anything against it. I think it'd be useful in a normal year if there's something we want to look further into. Yeah, I mean if you can I'd say if you can organize it that way, that'd be good. But if you can't, it wouldn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to not have it. Like, I just don't get too bogged down on the details like that when really content is king. We want to see, it's less the format and the details, and it's more what you're telling us. But with the engineering notebook, if you want to have it available in the off chance, in the whatever chance that the judges might want to ask for it, Google Docs would work fine. I mean, it also doesn't have to be in one file like the portfolio does. You could have a Google Docs with one document for your engineering, with one document or folder for your outreach, that kind of thing. It can be broken up. Like that's perfectly fine. If we need it, then you can send us a link for it and we can get into it that way. But I wouldn't feel, because like, can you imagine trying to upload a normal engineering notebook beginning to end in one document? That'd be insanity. No. And all, you know, the notebook is going to be a working document anyways. So, I mean, organize it so that we can find what we're looking for, but I'd say don't feel like that has to be in the same format as the portfolio.
Yeah, we've definitely tried uploading our notebook in one file and it has not worked very well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is like, please don't, when you're going to a judging event, please do not upload your notebook into whatever sharing hub they're using. We don't have, I'm pretty sure we'll not have enough bandwidth to be able to sustain like however many teams uploading, how those, like a huge document like that. Any other questions?
I guess I wanted to, oh, go ahead, Helen, I think.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, and I know that we kind of touched upon this a little earlier and how it's like different for each team, but out of like all of the possible topics for your portfolio, is there any like, whether it's like the design process or whatever, is there any specific topic that you would definitely recommend emphasizing for each team?
Engineering process is probably going to be the most important. I mean, if you look at the Think Award criteria, that lays out really clearly what we look for the Think Award. So if you hit those points, that you'll have covered most of the bases. Because, and then the engineering process, what we find most helpful is we want to see the progression. We want to see the development, and how did you, because you like I said, you don't just build the perfect robot day one. You take things on, you put things on, you take things off, you try it, you have trial and error, you test things out, you change materials, you change your wheels, that kind of thing. But there's a reason for all of that. This didn't work because of this, that we tried it this way and we found that you only worked 1 out of 5 times, or it kept breaking on us, or it didn't give you the traction you needed, or that kind of thing. There's reasons behind your change. And what we find is that a lot of teams don't document that very well. It's like we'll look at the notebook and then tell us, okay, we did this today, without the why. That's the part that we want to know, is why did you do it that way? There's always a reason behind it. So I'd say that's a big part of it. But yeah, if you look at the requirements under the Think Award, that will cover the basic requirements for all the other awards as well. But the engineering design process, I'd say, is probably the most important thing we look at.
I had a question about the control award. As you mentioned, right, it's a separate document, so like you wouldn't combine them. But I guess I was wondering, if the judges are going to mostly be referring to the portfolio to consider teams for the, it's a more technical question then. Are the judges going to be looking at the portfolio to decide whether to look at the control award, or the control awards all judged separately?
The control award, I believe, would be judged separately. I'm trying to, let's see. You must still have an engineering portfolio with the control award if you submit one, and it must, according to the manual, must include engineering content that documents the control components. So if you're putting in a control award for certain sensors and your sensors aren't mentioned in the portfolio, then to me that would mean that you don't have it documented in the portfolio. Like it's part of your robot. Why isn't it in your robot design? That kind of thing. So, but it is a separate form. So we won't consider teams for control award unless they submit the control award form. But with that, there are requirements in the portfolio for control award.
So yeah, so we should still document like control elements and algorithms in the portfolio then?
Yeah. If you're going to submit for the control award, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
All right. Okay. I'm going to leave my email in the chat if you guys want to look into there. And please don't judge me. I made this email when I was in high school. But If anyone has work in progress portfolios or even notebooks that you'd like me to take a look at, I do this for Delaware, I do this for Pennsylvania at workshops and at scrimmages and stuff, just to and if there's any questions at all, I mean, feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to take a look. Or if we want, we can schedule some Zoom calls and we can go over it in person. I think it'd be easier to talk it out rather than me typing up 4 pages to send back. So if you want to record that, if not, Mo should have my email as well, so you can get it from them. So
Yeah, we actually prepared just a very rough draft of a portfolio based off of our notebook from last year, and we were thinking maybe I can share my screen now, and we could quickly talk through it.
Sure.
So here, I'll put the link in the chat also if anyone wants to just scroll through it on their own. Okay, yeah, so definitely one area that I noticed you mentioned a lot that I don't think we have represented here would be like evolution of design or design process. So that's one area I would definitely anticipate we would need to improve on. But if anyone looking at the portfolio has other comments, definitely feel free to speak up.
how many pages did you end up with?
There are 10. Yeah, so if anyone has thoughts on, well, since we do have 5 pages left, like what pages we should add, I guess. I think you'll also notice we are probably missing the team plan or the business plan. So that would definitely be another area.
I'm wondering if your page 7 is necessary.
Yeah, like the general match strategy.
Yeah. I say it doesn't hurt to have it in there if you have the space, but if you find yourself running out of room, that might be something you can sacrifice. If rather than summarizing it in a page like that, you could incorporate the aspects of it into your mechanisms, kind of like why did you build the mechanism? It's for this specific strategy. Like we want to do this in the game, we want to do that in the game, rather than having a whole separate page for it. It doesn't hurt, like I said, but if you find yourself tight on space, I'd say that would be something you could sacrifice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like incorporating it into the like, why did you build it this way and such.
Your outreach section is good. I did notice you don't have anything about mentors in here.
Yeah, just like the brief part in the page 3, I guess.
Oh wait, you do. Yes, you do. Okay. Yeah, for your intro. Okay. Team structure, student recruitment. Yeah, I'd say either business / sustainability plan. And then more about your actual design process would be definitely good to add. But no, it's a very good start.
Oh, one other question I had is, I think you somewhat answered it, but that like content is the most important thing. But I guess we were wondering, I know there are a couple people at Mo, myself included, who like to make things pretty and go off on tangents with that. But I guess we were wondering, is that like a worthwhile use of time, or would a team who like makes it very stylized have an advantage?
No, I wouldn't say it'd be an advantage, but at the same time, you want to make sure there's consistency. I wouldn't dock people for like not dock. That sounds bad. Like I wouldn't hold it against a team for not making it pretty. Like, you know, the shading that you have on the first page, like that kind of thing. Like, I mean, but it does make it look more professional. And this is a portfolio. So if you have the time, I'd say definitely go for it. But it's not part of our consideration criteria.
Okay, yeah, that's a good good to know. Oh, in terms of the team bios, what kinds of things would you want to see in that section, or like meeting the team and the mentors?
Um, do you know? That's kind of, I don't know. Definitely keep it brief because you don't want to waste real estate on too much of that. I think the requirements do specify for the team section. Where'd it go? I know I saw it. I saw a blurb about you know how like in the team in the notebook usually you have like a summary of each member, like a bio summary of each member.
Yeah.
I saw something regarding that about the portfolio. Now I can't find it.
Yeah, like including a little bit about each person.
Yeah, I think it was something regarding that. Sorry, I'm like, I know there's a lot of dead air right now. Information about a team and the team summary. Da, 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 da. I can't find it right now. Somewhere in the manual. I mean, the Motivate Award under the team portfolio requirements lists out a lot of stuff about the team. Team organization plan, which could describe their future goals and the steps they will take to reach those goals. Examples of what the plan could include are team identity, fundraising goals, sustainability goals, timelines, outreach to non-technical groups, finances, and community service goals. Team can explain the individual contributions of each team member and how these apply to the overall success of the team. So it depends on how you want to organize it. I would say I think you've captured the basics of it with pages 3 and 4. But you might want to expand a little bit on how each individual member contributes to the team.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, and thank you for taking a look at this. This is definitely really helpful to get some like very automatic feedback early on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but definitely flesh out your design process. Like I see you have the mechanisms, like the snapshot pictures kind of thing. But we still want to see progression. So what did you start with and how did you get to where you are now?
Like earlier versions and what didn't work.
I will say you do have a lot of real like empty space. That you could probably use. I mean, your outreach pages look fine, but your engineering pages, like your autonomous strategy, you got a lot of empty space on that page. And honestly, like your pictures are kind of big. Like you could definitely shrink those a little bit and get more information on one page.
Yeah, squeeze more into them.
Also, I would, if you have the resources, print it out, see how it looks like printed, because think about it for the future. I mean, like being online is one thing, but like if you want to look at like possible future content or future planning, you'll be physically handing this portfolio into the judges at an event. So what does that look like? What if they're flipping through it? Do the pictures really need to be that big, or can they be a little bit smaller? Can you do more of a progression, like a progression in one page, or as opposed to multiple pages, that kind of thing? Just it might help a little bit if you print it out and actually look at it that way, rather than, because I feel like things on screen and things like on a physical piece of paper kind of give you different aspects. And I wouldn't worry about it being too small for a computer, because we can always zoom in. So
yeah, that's a good tip. I hadn't really considered like how this would sort of change when you're in person, and especially since we're not really sure about some of these competitions still. Yeah, well, thank you for taking a look at this.
You're welcome. Yeah, let me know if once you work on it some more, if you want me to take a look again, we can always schedule something.
Okay, are there any other questions for Lena before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us and giving us all of this great feedback.
You're welcome. And like I said, feel free to reach out. And if you have any questions, not just about the notebook, but about judging in general, this year is going to be interesting, shall we say. And there's definitely stuff that we're all going to have to, be a little flexible on in the judging process this year. But if you have any questions about interviews, about the deliberation process or anything like that, feel free to reach out.
Great, thanks. Thanks everyone for joining us. We will get these presentations and this recording to you soon. And hopefully we'll see you guys virtual or in person sometime in the near future.
All right, thanks, bye.
Bye everyone.